Okay, so final video here. We're going to talk a little bit about mixing and mastering, maybe even lack thereof. I want to talk about some song specific things just for this and some things that just I feel and how I approach these concepts, because this is a prototype course. So this is the way I do things. Tip number one, when you are mixing, and this can be applied in like different stages throughout the writing process. I like to do it a few different times. Like where we're at right now in the song is actually a really good time to do it. Like we're halfway through the song. We have an intro, we have a build up, we have a big moment, we have a drop. This is the perfect time to kind of pause what we're doing and do a little bit of mixing. And the best way to do that is what I call top-down mixing, which is where you just start at the top of your track and you go all the way down. And psychologically, how you should be thinking about this process is, and mixing as a whole, is that every single track in your song should be treated as though it's as important as something you might do on the master channel, right? Like all of these pieces are a part of a bigger puzzle that all come together. You know, music production is the sum of a bunch of really small things that add up to hopefully something that's very good, right? But that's why I like to do things on individual channels. And I recommend you try this method as well, because it might work for you, because it works for me and it has for many years. If you think about like what happens on your master channel, you have to think about one or two or three maybe effects that can be applied to every single thing in your song. And there's just not many things like that, you know? So I like to do my mixing and even my mastering, like you could call it mastering, I guess, on individual channels. Because what you'll find is that if you give your individual channels every single thing that they need, right? Like I'll show you an example. We're going to start with a kick drum. Let's listen to our kick drum. It's a good kick drum, but there's a few things you want to do. You know, when we're doing top-down mixing, we want to think about EQing and we want to think about individual processing. So the first thing I like to do for drums to make them punch through is to use transient shaping. The Kiloheart transient shaper is really easy. You could also use the Ableton drum bus, even though it's not my favorite thing in the world. I just push the attack up a little bit and push the sustain down. The reason why transient shaping is so good is because it's one of those things that makes your sounds louder without you having to touch the volume. That's like a really good thing to look for in skills and tricks that you do while you're mixing, is what can I do to make this thing louder and more present in my mix without touching the volume fader? Because it's a lot easier to turn something down than it is to turn something up. Turning things up, you should probably try and avoid it if you can. So yeah, that's transient shaping. I'll A/B this, you can hear. That's on. So much punch here, cuts through the mix. It sounds like we turned it up, right? So that is a huge thing to do. The next thing we want to do is see what we can get rid of. And that is also, this is a good time for me to talk about my kind of thought process behind EQing and what we're doing with EQing. My first thought when I go to EQ something, and a lot of times it's my only thought, is what can I get rid of? Because I use this analogy a lot. This is a good time to talk about it if you haven't heard me talk about it. But mixing and songwriting, all of your sounds, like there's a finite amount of space that your sounds can exist in. You can picture your song like it's a jar. Or yeah, a jar is great, right? A jar. And then your limiter or your soft clipper or whatever you've got on your master, if anything, is like the lid on the jar. And then inside said jar, all of your sounds exist and they all have an assigned place. And if they've got all this extra stuff, more than what they need, then you're taking up room where another sound could be. So think about trimming the fat, you know, getting rid of what we don't need. That doesn't mean you have to low cut everything in the world if you don't want to. You know, there's an argument to be said that takes away a lot of life from the mix, but I like to low cut stuff. I just like the way that it sounds. So what I like to do when I'm identifying what can I get rid of is every sound has something that makes it what it is. Sometimes it's a bunch of things, but it starts with really a transient mostly. So let's listen to this kick drum, find out what we can get rid of. Normally, the thing that makes the sound is the loudest part of the sound. In this case, for a kick drum, it's down here, right? This is our kick transient. Yeah, I guess like it's like a combination of the body and the transient, but I'm just gonna get rid of the stuff below it. Now we don't want to approach too close. You can see we could get like right here, but will create potential phasing issues. So just to be safe, we're just gonna get rid of this low stuff. Now it's a kick drum. What else can I get rid of? Kick drum, they have all this boxy information right here. I tend to want to get rid of it if I can, and not get rid fully, but like we're just scooping, you know, all good things in moderation. So we're just going to do a scoop here, maybe a tiny baby boost here at 1K to make it a little clickier. We can get rid of some of this super high end, not too much. Okay. Maybe we give a little boost to the low end. Now I'll A/B it. Feels a little bit punchier and a little bit boomier on the bottom end of things, which I like. So, and then we're like in our head going through, does this thing need reverb? Does this thing need delay? Does this thing need compression? Right? That's the concept of top-down mixing. And I'll do this a few more times. We don't really need to go through the whole thing and do it, but I'll do this on groups just so you can understand exactly what I'm doing. So that's our kick drum. The next thing we do is we're going to EQ, right? So, we're going to do the snare. Let's start with transient shaper. Again, you could argue that transient shaping is something you have to do, in my opinion. You're just boosting a little attack and shortening it a little bit with sustained. We'll A/B this. This is on, off. On. So for EQing, the process is the same. We're going to find the transient, we're going to cut below it. Easy, right there. Whoop. Now this is where you would say, hey, does it need to have more of a transient? Maybe that's a vibe in itself. I don't really think it needs, it's already hella loud, but it feels also very bright to me. So like, this is where I would leave it probably. Excuse me. Okay. And you know, like, that's kind of it. Do we need reverb? Let's run a little bit of reverb on the send. That's some low endy reverb. Let's cut the low end out of that reverb. There we go. Cool. Let's look at the tops. This one's pretty easy. But a lot of people don't, you know, cut the low end out of their hi-hats. I like to. You know, most of the time you won't have anything down here. But if you do, good time to get rid of it. And you're thinking about, okay, cool. These are my tops. What can I do to make them as cool as possible? You know, treat them like the master. Treat them like you would your whole song. How can I make you the best version of yourself? Are we frequency shifting these hats to make them maybe lower because it's like we're doing like a low gangster thing in the intro, something like that? Or maybe we're frequency shifting them up because they don't have enough energy. A kind of concept that I want to get through to you is to experiment with all of your options. Like, you don't know if it's going to work or not, or if you need to do it or not until you do it. And chances are you're watching this and you're alone, and just do it. And if it sucks, undo it. But, you know, the unknown aspect of it, you know, if you don't do it in the first place, you'll never know. you need to know, right? Like mixing is all about problem solving. That's what mixing is. That's what music production is for a lot of it. Solving the problem. How can I fix this thing, right? How can I make it the best that it can be? So yeah, that's that. So that's top-down mixing, you know, and then like maybe on my sidechain group, I'll cut the low end out of the sides. Now we can do that with EQ8 or whatever you want. You just switch it to mid-side. You know, I normally use ProQ, but I'll use EQ8 for this, where you go to sides and you're just cutting the sides, the low end out of the sides at around 180, 150. Doesn't really matter. The whole point of this is that we are making room for our sub bass, right? Because what happens when you're looking at all the stuff in your jar, you're getting rid of stuff, other sounds are able to just appear and become more present in your mix. Which is, again, right? It's things are becoming louder without having to touch the volume fader. That's the goal. Making room for everything. That's really the mental behind this, you know? That's a big part of it. And then, so what I would literally sit here and go through every single one of these things. Oh, there's a shout, let's low cut it. Okay, cool. Let's make sure my side chain is locked in. Okay, there's synths here. Does this group need to be compressed together to make the sound squish together? You know, just what can you do to make the thing be the thing that it wants to be? We talked about sub. The last thing I want to do in terms of mixing is talk about the analyzer tools. A lot of this I went over in Mixing Fundamentals 1, so I'm not going to go deep dive into them now. But I will show you how I use span to make sure that my sub is at the right volume. Basically, span and a loudness meter interact with each other to allow you to use span to see if things are at the right volume. So once you're at a certain number of perceived volume, I'm using the Goodhertz loudness meter. You can always use Ulean loudness meter. They're both free. It doesn't matter. We're just looking to see that our short-term LUFS, or even momentary LUFS, whatever, is at least -6 or closer to 0. Because once it's at -6 or -5 or -4, then we can use this -30 line right here in span to see if things are at the right volume. So if something is above this line, it's probably too loud. Let's see what our volume is.
Spiritual pressure.
This is so loud. This is -3 LUFS. That is so loud. Did we do, y'all been watching this from the beginning. Did we do anything to make this loud? No. All I have on my master is G-clip. And I have this in from the beginning. G-clip is a soft clipper. This gain knob is for flavor. You know, the louder this gain knob is, the louder your song will be, but the more likely you are to distort. So I normally just default it to like 1. So I can get that little extra bit of on my mix. But if we put it to 0, we're probably still gonna be really loud. Right, we're at -4, and that is awesome. So like, there's no problems that we have here, like getting loud enough. If you have problems getting your sounds individually loud enough, then you're not processing them correctly. So focus on that. Again, a lot of people are like, wow, I want my track to be loud. I'm just going to crank the limiter on the master. Again, that's one effect that you're applying to your entire mix, when in reality, the problem probably lies in individual channels. And are they turned down too much? Like things don't need to be quiet. It's way more fun to make music when things are loud. So we can use, let's go back to span. We'll look at span to see if our sub is at the right volume. And then what I do is I get my sub to this -30 line, and then I mix everything into it. So we've got some highs here. Probably our hi-hats are too loud. this looks like it's kind of at the right volume. Maybe needs a little bit of loudness. We'll put it up to. Did we low cut this group? Okay, we did. All right, good. Yeah, I mean, as far as like a rough mix goes, and getting it to that final mix is just further and further tweaking. Like right now, where we are right now is not far away from what I would release. Like it really isn't. And that's what I want you to kind of wrap your head around, is that they aren't different processes. If you're mixing as you're going, like there's no like, all right, cool, I'm done writing, time to mix and master my song. And that's not the way I go about things. I find that just to be ineffective. We're all about maximum efficiency and productivity. We're getting results. We're getting things done in a good amount of time so we can go about our life and continue to live and go on tour and play shows and get all the good stuff, right? Just make the music. Just keep it cooking, keep it schmoving. That's my take on mixing and mastering. It's a bit of a micro rant, but that's my view. And remember, this is only my view. I highly recommend you like watch other people talk, formulate your own opinions. It takes time to be able to do that. In the meantime, you can just do what I do, see if it works for you. You know, try it out. And if you got any questions, hit me up. And thank you so much for taking my course. I hope you also made a halfway decent banger like this one. It's all good. If you didn't, I'll see you in the workshops. We'll hang out. I'll see you in Discord. Much love. I really appreciate you. See you later.